Hello, friends. Welcome to another case study. Today's case comes from Pakistan. It's been quite some time since I've discussed a case from Pakistan, so without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into it. On February 20th, 2007, Pakistan's Social Welfare Minister, Miss Zille Huma Usman, attended a gathering. She was addressing her party members about new policies. However, before she could even begin her speech, a man stood up, and within a blink of an eye, Zille Huma Usman's life came to an end. The biggest question was, how did this man muster the courage to attack a public figure in such a brutal manner? And an even bigger question, why did he do it? Let's learn more about this case. The central figure in this story is Ghulam Sarwar, born in 1967 in the conservative city of Gujranwala, Pakistan. Ghulam Sarwar, also known as Hafiz Mohammad Sarwar, grew up in a deeply traditional environment. Gujranwala was a rigidly orthodox place where people strictly adhered to religious and cultural norms, especially concerning women. Rules for women were harsh and were enforced more stringently than for men. Ghulam's family was no different. They were extremely traditional and conservative. In their worldview, women were expected to cover their faces, avoid interaction with men outside their family, and dedicate themselves to being good housewives. People believed that a woman's true place was in the kitchen. Ghulam's mother exemplified these values. She had lived her entire life in Purdah Vale, never showing her face to any man outside her family. Despite living in Gujranwala for years, no outsider had ever seen her face. This was the norm for women in the city. You might think that Ghulam's mother led a difficult and oppressive life, but she believed her way of life was correct. She even thought other women should live the same way. Ghulam, deeply influenced by his mother, grew up idolizing her as a model Muslim woman. As a child, Ghulam absorbed these traditional ideas about women. When he started studying at PB Model School, he showed little interest in science or mathematics. Instead, his mother regularly taught him about Islam and its traditions. Ghulam particularly enjoyed listening to religious teachings and stories related to Islam. After graduating, he decided to delve deeper into Islamic teachings and enrolled in a madrasa Islamic seminary to study Islamic laws and religion. You might assume that Ghulam was inherently religious and a good person because of his faith. However, the reality was starkly different. While Ghulam was devoted to his religion, his views, particularly about women, were deeply problematic. His family's strict environment and the rigid societal norms around him significantly influenced his thoughts. Growing up in such a conservative and rigid society fueled Ghulam's extremist tendencies. His ideas about religion and society became extreme, especially his views about women. If he saw a woman without a hijab or behaving in a way he deemed inappropriate, he would immediately label her as immoral or unethical. After completing his studies, Ghulam became a mullah cleric at a local mosque in Gujranwala. Every Thursday after prayers, he would deliver sermons. His sermons reflected his extremist ideology, which resonated with the local community, even if they were not as radical as him. His popularity grew, and Ghulam soon married. To support his family, he started teaching children the Quran. However, marriage did not change his rigid views about women. Ghulam's association with extremist groups like Jamaat-ud-Dawa and Lashkar-e-Taiba added to his notoriety. Although he wasn't an official member, he often attended their meetings and assemblies. People began viewing him as dangerous. Ghulam also carried a gun, further cementing his image as a threatening figure. Despite his extremist leanings, Ghulam led an outwardly normal life. He had 9 children, 2 of whom were named Adam and Nova, inspired by Islamic prophets. This showed his deep faith, but he had distorted the essence of religion. For Ghulam, religion became a tool for enforcing his rigid and cruel beliefs. He abandoned Islamic values like compassion, tolerance, and love. He grew increasingly hostile, not just towards women, but also towards transgender individuals. In one incident, when some transgender people came near his home to give blessings, Ghulam angrily picked up his gun and fired into the air, scaring them away. He repeated this behavior on 2 other occasions. While he faced minor legal issues for this, he was let off with a warning since no one was seriously injured. Ghulam's extreme and misogynistic mindset took a deadly turn in 2023 when he was arrested for the murders of 3 alleged sex workers between September 2002 and January 2003. 2 of the women were from Gujranwala, and 1 was from Lahore. This wasn't his first crime. He had previously attempted to kill several other women. In total, Ghulam faced 6 cases of murder and attempted murder. He targeted women with extreme brutality, often attacking their private parts with knives or guns. Those who survived were left paralyzed or permanently disabled. Ghulam believed his actions were justified and saw himself as performing a social service. He claimed that an immoral woman leads 100 people to hell. In his twisted mind, killing women involved in sex work was not only permissible but necessary according to Islamic law. However, blinded by his hatred, Ghulam failed to see that his actions were a grave sin in the eyes of the very religion he claimed to follow. Ghulam considered himself the savior of society, someone who was trying to eradicate evil. Unfortunately, the people of Gujranwala seemed to share this belief. When Ghulam Sarwar was arrested, people continued to support his actions and even praised him. Public opinion was entirely in his favor, which significantly influenced the trial in court. The situation reached its peak when the families of the victims suddenly withdrew their cases and the witnesses altered their statements. As a result, within just a year, Ghulam Sarwar was acquitted of all charges with honor. Despite committing such heinous crimes, his clean release and bail led to widespread rumors about his alleged connections with terrorist organizations. People speculated that it might have been these terrorists who threatened the victims' families to withdraw their cases. After his release, Ghulam opened a hardware store and attempted to lead a normal life. However, there was a persistent belief that he had opened the shop with the help of terrorists. Although it was a hardware store on the surface, rumors suggested it served as a base for terrorist activities. From the outside, Ghulam seemed to live an honest and straightforward life. The police took these rumors seriously and tried to find evidence linking him to the terrorist groups. Despite several investigations, they found no proof of such connections. When the situation calmed down, Ghulam's younger brother, Afzal, revealed that he had sold some of their land to compensate the victims' families so they would withdraw their cases. This claim seemed plausible, given the dire financial situation of those families and their urgent need for money. Others believed the families were afraid that the court proceedings might tarnish the reputation of the deceased women, causing more humiliation in society. Regardless of the reasons, the undeniable truth was that a criminal walked free without punishment, and the justice system failed to deliver. During this entire episode, an interesting aspect of Ghulam's psyche emerged. While he was in police custody, a local psychiatrist from Gujranwala visited him to understand the motive behind his crimes. After interacting with Ghulam, the psychiatrist confirmed that he was a deranged individual. They recommended that Ghulam be kept in a mental institution instead of a jail for everyone's safety. However, the police ignored this suggestion and didn't transfer him. Throughout the case, the public's support for Ghulam stemmed from his role as a religious cleric. His public speaking skills earned him considerable admiration and bolstered his confidence. This widespread community support led him to perceive himself as a guardian of religion. Eventually, he began to see himself as above the law and the courts. This newfound confidence shifted his focus beyond society to politics. Ghulam's political views were shaped by his extremist and flawed mindset. He admired the ideologies of terrorist organizations and believed that women should not participate in politics. In his opinion, a woman's role was confined to caring for children and managing the household. At that time in Pakistan, however, there was a prominent female political leader who was not only a woman but also. She stood against everything that people with a slave-like mentality considered right. Her name was Zille Huma Usman. In 2022, she participated in the provincial assembly elections of Punjab, Pakistan, and received many votes due to her progressive ideas. By 2006, she worked as a parliamentary secretary in the Department of Development and Planning. Her outstanding performance led to her appointment as the Minister of Social Welfare in the same year. Alongside being a government office holder, she was also a women's rights activist. She made significant contributions to women's empowerment. Unlike many ordinary politicians, Huma was highly educated. She studied law and held a master's degree in political science. You might have noticed that I am addressing her as Mrs. Yes. She was a mother of 2 young children. She wasn't just opposed to the ideology of people like Ghulam Sarwar, but was also a bold response to their regressive thoughts. She was not only an extraordinary leader, but also a devoted wife and a loving mother. Huma was a living example that women are not confined to the boundaries set by men or society. They can achieve much more. However, her good work and efforts toward development troubled many people like Ghulam Sarwar. Despite being respected and honored, she had enemies. In 2005, for the first time in Pakistan, a marathon for women's empowerment was organized, and Huma played a significant role in its success. But on the day of the marathon, a group of extremists arrived at the stadium. They fired shots, vandalized property, and even set the venue on fire. It was a very dangerous situation. Thankfully, Huma managed to escape unharmed. But unfortunately, this was going to be her last deadly encounter. Ghulam Sarwar, who had been keeping an eye on Huma for a long time, was filled with hatred for her because she represented everything he opposed. Ghulam, mentally unbalanced, had long planned to meet her. He had made up his mind that the day he met her, he would kill her just because her ideas were different from his. This showed how twisted his mentality was. In February 27, 3 years later, Ghulam learned that Zille Huma Usman was visiting Gujranwala to meet her party members. He decided to infiltrate the meeting by posing as a fake party member at the Muslim League house. On February 20th, Zille Huma arrived in Gujranwala for the meeting, unaware of Ghulam's intentions. When the meeting began, and Huma was about to speak, Ghulam suddenly stood up and asked, "Where is your hijab? Why is your face not covered?" Before she could respond, Ghulam pulled out a pistol and shot her in the head. Everyone in the room was shocked and terrified. While Ghulam tried to escape, the attendees showed courage and caught him, handing him over to the police. Huma was airlifted to a hospital, but she succumbed to her injuries due to the headshot. Ghulam's hatred had claimed another life. During police interrogation, Ghulam confessed, "I could never tolerate a woman handling public affairs." He claimed his actions were part of a religious duty, which he was proud of. This delusion reflected his warped perspective. The case attracted international attention. Then President Pervez Musharraf and Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz also filed petitions demanding the death penalty for Ghulam, which was a rightful step. Despite his claims of being supported by many, the heinous nature of his crime left him isolated. After 4 years of trials, on March 21, 2011, Ghulam was sentenced to death. During his time in jail, Ghulam contracted tuberculosis, which worsened over time. He died in prison on January 27, 2012, a slow and lonely death that he had brought upon himself. This case serves as a lesson for all of us. Disagreeing with someone doesn't mean you have the right to harm them. Huma Usman's life and legacy remind us to value understanding and tolerance over hatred.